On first looking into Chapman's Homer, written by John Keats. The analysis is done by Dr. Vinamrata.
Hello, my dear viewers. Today, the poetry that we are going to study closely is on first looking into Chapman's Homer, written by John Keats. And you will be surprised to know that this poem was written in 1816 when Keats was only 12 years of age. He was having a discussion with his friend Charles Gordon Clark, and at that time only Clark introduced him to the translated works of Homer done by Chapman. Homer is a Greek poet, a very famous and influential one of the ancient writers in Greek, and Homer's Iliad and Odysseys are very famous works. So those works have been translated by Elizabethan playwright George Chapman. So because it was in Greek, it's not easy for anyone to access it. But after the translation was done, actually Homer would not be so much famous unless and until its translations were read by many of the English writers. So Keats is very overwhelmed by reading the translations done by George Chapman, and as a reaction to that he writes this poetry. It is an overwhelming response to Chapman's translations, and at the night they were having this discussion, Clark and Keats, and in the very morning Keats composes this poetry, and hands it over to Clark, and it is written in a sonnet form, and it is written in a Petrarchian sonnet form. So it has got an octave and sestet, and we'll deal with the poetry. But before that, first a little bit about Keats. As we all know, Keats is a romantic poet, and he is one of the younger romantics, and he died very young at only 25 years of age. I've already made a detailed video on Keats's On the Eve of St. Agnes, and there I have talked in detail about romanticism and the writing style of Keats. So the link I'm sharing in the description box, you can go there and find it out. So as for here, all we will discuss is that he was younger romantics, and his basic features of the work are that he is known for his aesthetic pleasures, he is known for his sensuousness, he is known for his Hellenism in the poems. And the poem today that we are dealing with, it creates a kind of epiphany. It exalts you, it takes you to a next level. So we can see here we have the poem in front of us. The first stanza is of 8 lines, hence octave, and the second stanza is of 6 lines, hence sestet. Together they form 14 lines, therefore it is an Italian or a Petrarchian sonnet. Now, in the first line you see he says, "Much have I travelled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. Round many western islands have I been, which bards in fealty to Apollo hold. Oft of one wide expanse had I been told, that deep-browed Homer ruled at his demise. Yet did I never breathe its pure serene, till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold." So, poet here says that he has travelled much in the realms of gold. He has seen lots and lots of this whole world around him, and he has seen all the pleasures what money can give you. And basically here the real treasure is books. So he also wants to imply that here the gold is a kind of metaphor for the books. So he also wants to imply that he has read many and many of the books, but none was so much treasurable as the thing that he has excavated today. And so he went on to state that among all the realms of gold, among all the states, among all the kingdoms, among all the western islands, he was told that Homer was the deep browed Homer, means a person who is grave, deep brow he has got, so he is grave, and he used to rule this world. He ruled as this was his demesne, means demesne is kind of state, a kind of a person who rules or owns lots of land around him. So Homer was the ruler of all these lands, of all these western lands. Why? Because even bards were in fealty to Apollo were held by, in wide expanse, were held by Homer. So who is Apollo? Apollo is the sun god, and he is the basically he is the authority above the muses. And what is the work of the muses? All the nine muses sister, they give you kind of sense of arts and aesthetics, be it fine arts, be it writing poetry, be it literature. So muses are generally the inspiration, and because muses owe their devotion to Apollo, so he's saying that even Apollo's bards, even the people, the bards, the singers who used to sing in praise of Apollo, they all told him everywhere around in the western islands, what he came to know was Homer was the best of all. Homer was the one who was ruling all around. But how will be able to understand Homer? Yet did I never breathe its pure serene. He was not unable to understand Homer. He was not unable to find out the pure serenity of Homer until and unless till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold. Why? Because unless and until he read the translations of Chapman done by read translations of Homer done by Chapman, he was unable to understand the true worth of Homer. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies. And when suddenly it was a kind of excavation for him, it was a kind of an invention for him. He has found something new suddenly. So he compares himself, this is a simile here. He is comparing himself to a watcher of the sky, means an astronomer. So just like an astronomer who looks into the sky and sees the various planets and studies the various stars, and suddenly he sees that a new planet swims in, means a new discovery is made, maybe the finding of the new planet like Pluto or Uranus. So just like a new planet is found, and what amount of pleasure will the sky watcher get? What amount of pleasure will the astronomer get? Same kind of pleasure Keats got when he read the translations of Homer done by Chapman. And then again he uses another simile and he compares himself to Coetzee and says, or like stout Coetzee, when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. So he compares him to two things. One, as an astronomer who looks into the sky and finds out a new planet. So the kind of happiness, the kind of pleasure that astronomer would feel, the same kind of pleasure is felt by Keats here. The another thing he compares himself is with stout Coetzee. Coetzee was a wanderer and expeditor, and he says that Coetzee founded out Pacific Ocean, and when how he would have felt with his men, along with his men, when he would have found out the Pacific Ocean with his eagle eyes. Eagle eyes is a metaphor where he is comparing the eyes of Coetzee with the eyes of an eagle, because an eagle can see from far off. In the same way, from far off, when Coetzee would have seen the Pacific and his men would have surprised, they all would have looked at each other with a wild surmise, a surprise. Why? Because they had never expected to find out a sea like that, a Pacific Ocean, and they saw that when they were standing on the peak of the Darien. Darien is a mountain, and they were silently standing on the mountain's peak, and in wild surmise, in wild surprise, they see that the Pacific Ocean is in front of us. So the happiness which they would have faced at that time when they would have found out the ocean is the another example with which Keats compares his state. Now here there is one little glitch, that is that Keats was very naive at that time. He was only 12 years of age, and when he is writing this, a little bit confused or mixed up he is, and there is one mistake, that is Coetzee never found out Pacific. It was Balboa who found out Pacific Ocean, and Coetzee was an expeditor who found out the Mexican Valley. So this is a little bit of glitch here, but we will just take it in this form that Kodze was an expeditor, and the way any expeditor would find out a new land, a new area, a whole new world, just like Vasco da Gama founded out Cape of Good Hope. So in that way, the happiness which the expeditor would have felt, or the happiness which an astronomer would have felt when he would have founded out a new star on a new planet in the sky, the same happiness, the same overwhelming nature is felt by Keats when he first reads the translations of Homer done by Chapman. So that is all about in this sonnet, and I am sure you must have understood the poem. If there is any doubt, then you can comment me in the comment section, and if you have liked the video, then please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if there is any positive feedback, then also do comment on the video.